when I had cancer, one of the things that, to stay sane, that you have to do is you have to come to terms with your fear of dying. Because when you have something growing inside of you that's eating you alive, there's a real psychology there that is, well, it eats the psyche. It consumes the psyche, and the way it consumes it is with anxiety and fear. And so you spend a lot of time contemplating that, because you have to have faith that in what you are doing. And I say faith specifically and not belief, because if you believe what you're doing is right, it's not good enough. You won't be able to beat it. You have to have, in my case, that was the truth. You have to have faith, which is, I'm not believing that this is going to work. It is going to work. It's not a question of when these coffee enemas are going to heal me, or it's not a question of if these coffee enemas are going to heal me. It's a question of when. And it's really hard to do that when you go to get your test results back and they're not the numbers that you're wanting to see. I remember, I didn't know it at the time, and this is one of the things I didn't share in my original cancer video, but I didn't know it at the time. I was drinking vinegar twice a day, and I didn't know that I was drinking too much. And with holistic medicine, so much of it is you've just got to kind of trial by error, and I guess you could say, it's the same thing when you're taking a antidepressant pharma drug, it's trial by error, And so there's this element of insecurity that comes along with fighting it naturally, and that none of the Western doctors are believing in you, and none of them think it's going to work, and they all think you're nuts, and they don't want to help you, and because you're not following the methodology that they want you to follow. And so you're very isolated, you're very alienated. And so you have to come to terms with these aspects of your personality and fears in your personality that you've always avoided, that you've always run from, or you've just excused away, or whatever, because when you're laying on your side 4 hours a day doing coffee enemas, or 3 hours a day doing coffee enemas, you have a lot of time to think. I would go every few weeks to get my blood drawn, and with the cancer that I had testicular cancer. It actually puts a female hormone into your blood, and this hormone, which shouldn't be present in a male, becomes present as long as you have the cancer. And so as the cancer progresses, as it begins to complexify and develop in the testicle, that number continues to increase, will continue to increase. And the worse that you're getting, the more that number will increase. And so that's one of the barometers, is one of the only barometers I had that I could actually, see. Because when I was going to the naturopath, they do an electromagnetic test that it's not a hard readout in the sense that test is. Because your electromagnetics are always flexing and fluxing. And so, and radically so. And so, the test is jumpy when you're getting the test at the naturopathic doctor, and you've got to take an average. And so, the freaking scientific mind that I have, this mind that's just determined to get everything straightened out, that was the only test I had to rely on. And one afternoon, I was drinking all of this vinegar, and I was beginning to get these really bad stomach cramps, and I didn't know that it was the vinegar that was doing it, and it was, because I was drinking too much of it. And it was beginning to tear away and eating away at the lining of my stomach, and it was causing this just unbelievable pain. Just you just can't even freaking imagine this pain. I would go to work sometimes in the afternoon. I worked on Saturdays, and that was just part of my schedule. And I would crawl into a ball under the console, the sound console where I worked, and I would cry. And this went on for hours, for weeks. And I only would get this test every few weeks. And so I was really doing poorly, And I, psychologically, I'm just in this desert, and I'm, trying to fight it as best I can. And I'm watching this number, praying to God that number will keep going down. And I went, and it was one of my worst, I went to the test. I would have these tests done on Friday. I would always go with my wife, Jenny. And I would have these tests done on Friday. Man. And, it was always pensive, because you're on the edge. You have this thing eating you. And, I got the test result back, Jenny, I don't think she was with me at the time or something. And, it came in the mail or something. I can't remember how I got it, but I had it in my hands, and I had to go over to my parents' house. They lived next door to us at the time. And I had to go over to their house for something. And so I went into their house, and I opened the envelope. And the number from the previous week, it had doubled. And that's really one of the moments when I broke. I really broke down psychologically. And I collapsed. No one was home at their house. I collapsed on the floor. And I just started screaming over and over again. And I was screaming at God. I was so frustrated. Man, it was rough. And it was, it's nice now because I can talk about it without totally breaking down. There was times, when I was closer to it when I couldn't even speak for 5 minutes. But that was being eaten. It's like the scene in Jaws, where that captain is fallen into the mouth of the fish and is chewing on him. It's exactly what it felt like. I've got, every Western trained medical doctor telling me I'm a damn fool. I have family members telling me that I was insane. They completely disagreed with me and thought I was nuts. Telling me that they didn't think I loved my kids. That I was being frivolous with my life, And I got these tests coming back saying that I'm dying and it's not working, and I'm putting everything, I'm drinking a bottle of frankincense every day. 4 coffee enemas a day, every day. No salt or very little salt, no sugar at all. And I'm dropping weight. I'm looking in the mirror and I'm starting to look like a skeleton. I'm a Swindoll, so I have these really strong jaw lines. And when a Swindoll, any one of the boys in the family, me, my dad, or my brother, lose weight, there's this sucking, the skin sucks in. And my jaw's starting to stick out. And I'm looking in the mirror and it looks like I'm looking at a skeleton. I'm dying. And so you're literally being eaten. And so what this taught me was to not fear being eaten. Because when you've already been eaten, you know what that's like. You know what it's like to be a walking dead person, And so it doesn't bother you anymore. It doesn't bother you anymore to go into that space, because you've been in that space and you learn from it, and you move on. And so when you no longer have that fear, what this taught me was that when you no longer have that fear, it's there's a renewing aspect of it, because now life clarifies, because you're not taken by this illusion, and it's like one of the things I learned a lot about in all of my studies with Alan Watts was these aspects of Hinduism. And one of the things that, as well as Joseph Campbell, and one of the things that always beguiled me as growing up and seeing these what I was told were idols that they worshipped. You have the female figure, right, in the circle, and they have all these arms sticking out, right? And you have like this octopus of arms, and in each hand, in each arm, there's an object being held, right? And so growing up Christian, I'm told that these people worship this, and it's an oversimplification. It's not the way it is. It's basically not the way it is. What that is a symbol which represents all the deities, the psychological positives and negatives that you have within you at all times. These are the negative and positive energies that captivate the psyche. And the idea of that symbol is by meditating on these specific aspects, these deities that run your life, these feelings and emotion that are the driving forces within you that inspire you to action and cause you to come to action. By meditating on them, you begin to understand them. In other words, you're walking right into the mouth. And so the idea is, by meditating on that, you can quench it, okay? Now, without my realizing it, I didn't know this, but when I was fighting cancer, I was having a meditation on death. Terence McKenna called it concrescence with thanatos. Thanatos is the death instinct within. It's a term out of Jungian psychology. And this concrescence with thanatos that happens when you're fighting a disease that's eating you is you're coalescing with that which you have greatest fear. And by coalescing with it, you no longer are afraid of it. You no longer are afraid of death.